Good morning, it's Justin. It's the 31st of August. Got some new equipment, so hopefully this will be a little less YouTube ghetto and a little more like I have some concept of what I'm doing. I'm here to talk to you today, since it's Monday, we're doing a character video. I want to talk to you, so we've talked about strengths, we've talked about weaknesses, let's talk about flaws. So, the difference between a weakness and a flaw is weaknesses create characters who can't overcome a particular object or particular problem because they lack a required strength. And that's something that they can gain throughout the course of whatever story it is that you're doing. But your actual flaws, that's something different. Your flaw might be that your character is unable to maintain a relationship, not because he's evil or wrong, but simply because it's so hard for him to trust someone, or he just instinctively pushes people away. Now, is that a weakness? Of course, but the difference is that this flaw is just part of who they are, or part of how they see the world. So instead of overcoming it the way you would overcome a strength, you have to overcome it by growing, and conversely, having a villain that has a flaw gives you a more rounded out villain, which is really where this becomes important. Having a flaw of any kind is always something you should strive for, but having a flaw specifically amongst your villains is really where you can make them human, even if they're not. Because at the end of the day, you're sharing the story with other human beings, and in order for them to understand your villain, the villain has to be kind of human too. If you look at the greatest two villains in all of cinema, as far as true villainy goes, and you know, I'm not saying they're the best that's ever been written, but they're the best that I know of, and they're my favorite. You'd be looking at Thanos and the Joker, the Heath Ledger one. The Heath Ledger Joker is interesting in that he has no flaws and no weaknesses, and yet is still compelling. And I think that the reason for that is that he isn't actually a villain. He's the savior of the city. But when we look at Thanos specifically, Thanos has this grandiose plan that if you sit down and rationally look at it, it makes sense on a surface level, but it doesn't have a lot of deep down sense. It quickly falls apart. Like, you know, finite resources are a problem, but if you can create out of nothing, then there's no reason for that to be a problem. But he's interesting because he's got strengths, he's got weaknesses, and he's got flaws. You know, his flaw is his worldview. His weakness is that he's obsessed with it, and it clouds his vision, and it makes him unable to understand what he's doing wrong. And ultimately, his arrogance is, you know, the big thing that leads to his downfall, because you know, he stops working as hard as he can and becomes arrogant, and stops being careful. At least that's the way that I would interpret those events. So flaws, it's really worth your time. It's a way to really add depth, and it's really not as hard as it seems once you start doing it. We've hit a little over 4. That's a lot for this. All right. Well, I love you. I hope you're having a good day. And remember, be flawed. Be amazing.